Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quiz Class. I'm your host, Ellen, and today we have 100 questions on general knowledge. Tonight we will be testing your knowledge, of course. We will be testing your memory and maybe even your luck. Let us know how you rank in the comments at the end, along with the answer to the bonus question. Let's begin. Which American city subway system has miles of unfinished abandoned tunnels beneath it? Boston, Cincinnati, or Chicago? Cincinnati. Which Cold War leader kept a private collection of over 20,000 bottles of wine? Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill, or John F. Kennedy? Joseph Stalin. What U.S. national park is home to a supervolcano that could alter the world's climate if it erupted? Glacier, Yosemite, or Yellowstone? Yellowstone. Which famous movie monster was inspired by fears of nuclear radiation in Japan after World War II? Mothra, King Kong, or Godzilla? Godzilla. Which car manufacturer introduced the first mass-produced hybrid model in the late 1990s? Nissan, Honda, or Toyota? Toyota. Which European city's catacombs contain the bones of more than 6 million people? Rome, Paris, or Vienna? Paris. Which famous musician was nearly deported from the US in the 1970s due to political activism? John Lennon, Bob Dylan, or Mick Jagger? John Lennon. Which First Lady restored the White House interiors to their historic 19th century style? Eleanor Roosevelt, Jacqueline Kennedy, or Lady Bird Johnson? Jacqueline Kennedy. Which famous writer invented over 1,000 new words and phrases that we still use today? Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, or William Shakespeare? William Shakespeare. And we're already on our 10th question. Which US president once gave a full State of the Union address written entirely in bullet points instead of prose? Lyndon B. Johnson, Jimmy Carter, or Ronald Reagan? Jimmy Carter. Which country is nicknamed the Land of the Rising Sun? South Korea, China, or Japan? Japan. Which rock legend was nearly electrocuted on stage when a faulty microphone shocked him mid-performance? Jimi Hendrix, Mick Jagger, or Keith Richards? Keith Richards. And here comes the next one. Which car became the first vehicle ever displayed as a permanent museum exhibit? Ford Model T, Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, or 1924 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost? 1924 Rolls-Royce. Which U.S. First Lady secretly ran a listening operation in the White House to monitor political allies and opponents? Edith Wilson, Eleanor Roosevelt, or Jackie Kennedy? Edith Wilson. The Dead Sea Scrolls were accidentally discovered by whom? British soldiers, an archaeologist, or Bedouin shepherds? Bedouin shepherds. Which city has a building so large it has its own microclimate? Dubai, Moscow, or Beijing? Moscow. Which famous singer once bought Graceland not for himself, but to stop developers from tearing it down? Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, or Frank Sinatra? Elvis Presley. Now for question 18. Which writer kept hundreds of pet cats and even left money in his will for their care? Charles Dickens, Ernest Hemingway, or Mark Twain? Mark Twain. Which car company produced a model that was banned in some U.S. states for being too fast for the roads? Dodge Charger Daytona, the Pontiac GTO, or the Chevrolet Corvette? Dodge Charger Daytona. Which American president gave campaign speeches entirely from the back of a train, a strategy later nicknamed whistle-stop tours? Warren Harding, Harry Truman, or Franklin Roosevelt? Harry Truman. Question 21. Which shipwreck is named the Titanic of the Great Lakes? Edmund Fitzgerald, Lusitania, or Empress of Ireland? Edmund Fitzgerald. Which African country's flag features a weapon, an AK-47 to be exact? Zimbabwe, Angola, or Mozambique? Mozambique. Which 1950s car model had a built-in record player for passengers? Chrysler Imperial, Ford Thunderbird, or Cadillac Eldorado? Chrysler Imperial. Which historical site still shows scorch marks from World War II bombings on its walls? Notre Dame, Cologne Cathedral, or Westminster Abbey? Cologne Cathedral. Which country has a town that disappears every night underwater, only to reappear every morning? Thailand, India, or Indonesia? Indonesia. Which 20th century artist once urinated onto his own art installations to complete them? Jackson Pollock, Marcel Duchamp, or Andy Warhol? Marcel Duchamp. Which president once kept a pair of grizzly bear cubs as pets on the White House lawn? Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, or Ulysses S. Grant? Thomas Jefferson. Which cult classic film nearly bankrupted its director because of endless retakes with real explosives? Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, or The Deer Hunter? Apocalypse Now. Which 1960s car was so poorly built that it inspired a U.S. book titled Unsafe at Any Speed? Ford Pinto, Chevrolet Equinox, or Chevrolet Corvair? The Chevrolet Corvair. We are at question 30. Which U.S. president was so tall he had his suit specially altered to hide how long his legs were? Lyndon Johnson, George Washington, or Abraham Lincoln? Abraham Lincoln. Which empire built an extensive network of roads so durable that many are still used today? The Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire, or Mongol Empire? The Roman Empire. Which country has a city that straddles two continents, Europe and Asia? Istanbul, Moscow, or Athens? Istanbul. And the next challenge? Which classic film famously had its ending rewritten on set because test audiences hated the original? Casablanca, Pretty Woman, or Sunset Boulevard? Pretty Woman. Who was the first musician to perform at New York's Yankee Stadium? Billy Joel, the Rolling Stones, or Elvis Presley? Billy Joel. Which novelist had a pet raven named Grip that inspired a famous literary character? Charles Dickens, Edgar Allan Poe, or Nathaniel Hawthorne? Charles Dickens. What car was nicknamed the Tin Lizzie for its affordability and durability? Studebaker Champion, the Chevrolet Bel Air, or Ford Model T? The Ford Model T. Which U.S. politician once delivered an entire campaign speech in the rain without an umbrella to prove toughness? Harry Truman, William Henry Harrison, or Andrew Jackson? William Henry Harrison. Up next, what event caused the world's first international news story spread by telegraph in the 1850s? The sinking of the SS Arctic, the Crimean War, or the California Gold Rush? The sinking of the SS Arctic. In Gone with the Wind, which controversial word caused a stir when spoken on screen in 1939? War, love, or damn? Damn. Which 1960s band was once refused entry to Disneyland because of their hippie image? Jefferson Airplane, The Doors, or The Byrds? The Doors. Which writer once lost an entire manuscript when his wife accidentally burned it in the fireplace? Mark Twain, Ernest Hemingway, or James Joyce? Ernest Hemingway. Which car inspired the famous line, "Any customer can have a car painted any color, so long as it is black"? Chevrolet Corvette, Ford Mustang or Ford Model T? Ford Model T. Which First Lady was nicknamed the Steel Magnolia for her mix of charm and toughness? Lady Bird Johnson, Rosalind Carter, or Barbara Bush? Lady Bird Johnson. Up next, which medieval event killed nearly 1/3 of Europe's population? The 30 Years' War, the Great Fire of London, or the Black Death? The Black Death. Which movie used an actual train crash instead of special effects, costing nearly 1/3 of the film's budget? Strangers on a Train, The General, or The Great Train Robbery? The General. Which novel opens with the line, "Call me Ishmael"? Treasure Island, Moby Dick, or Robinson Crusoe? Moby Dick. Which car model was designed after its creator sketched it on a napkin during lunch? The Volkswagen Beetle, Mustang Mach 1, or the Corvette Stingray? The Volkswagen Beetle. Which vice president was known for shooting his rival in a duel? Aaron Burr, John C. Calhoun, or Spiro Agnew? Aaron Burr. Who was the first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin, or Diana Ross? Aretha Franklin. And we are at question 50. Tell us in the comments how you're doing so far. Which American car was built with tail fins so large they were compared to airplane wings? Cadillac Eldorado, Buick Roadmaster, or Pontiac Bonneville? The Cadillac Eldorado. Which U.S. president delivered the shortest inaugural address in history? Just 135 words. Calvin Coolidge, George Washington, or James Madison? George Washington. Which movie was banned in several countries for its portrayal of military brutality, but later won an Oscar? Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, or Platoon? Platoon. Which singer is credited with popularizing the moonwalk dance move? James Brown, Michael Jackson, or Prince? And the answer is Michael Jackson, of course. Which 19th century senator was nicknamed the Great Compromiser for brokering peace deals? Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, or John C. Calhoun? Henry Clay. Which U.S. president won a Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album? Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, or Barack Obama? Barack Obama. Which actor turned down the role of Indiana Jones before Harrison Ford accepted it? Tom Selleck, Burt Reynolds, or Nick Nolte? What a bad decision that was. Burt Reynolds. The Beatles' famous rooftop concert in 1969 was held on top of which building? Apple Corps headquarters, Seville Theatre, or Abbey Road Studios? Apple Corps headquarters. In George Orwell's 1984, what is the name of the government surveillance system? Great Eye, Big Chief, or Big Brother? Big Brother. What iconic car was nicknamed the Deuce in the 1930s hot rod culture? Ford Model B, the Dodge Charger, or the Chevrolet Bel Air? The Ford Model B. We are on question 60. Which Motown artist was only 11 years old when he scored his first #1 hit, Fingertips? Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, or Marvin Gaye? Stevie Wonder. In Greek mythology, who was condemned to hold up the sky on his shoulders for eternity? Cronus, Prometheus, or Atlas? Atlas. What two countries share the world's longest undefended border? The US and Mexico, the US and Canada, or Russia and China? The US and Canada. Which US president was once a Hollywood actor and starred in over 50 films? Ronald Reagan, Dwight D. Eisenhower, or John F. Kennedy? Ronald Reagan. Which rock band performed the first concert inside the Roman Colosseum in 2003? Elton John, U2, or Paul McCartney? Paul McCartney. Which American car was advertised as the standard of the world for decades? Lincoln, Cadillac, or Chrysler? And here comes the answer, Cadillac. Let's try this one. Which Shakespeare play features the line, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks"? Othello, Macbeth, or Hamlet? Hamlet. Which city has the only intact medieval city walls in Europe that fully encircle the old town? Dubrovnik, York, or Prague? Dubrovnik. Which US state capital is the highest in elevation? Denver, Colorado, Santa Fe, New Mexico, or Helena, Montana? Santa Fe, New Mexico. Which legendary guitarist set his guitar on fire during a performance at the Monterey Pop Festival? Jimi Hendrix, Pete Townsend, or Eric Clapton? Jimi Hendrix. Question 70. The Terracotta Army in China was built to guard the tomb of which emperor? Emperor Gaozu, Emperor Wu, or Emperor Jin Shi Huang? Emperor Jin Shi Huang. Which South American city is nicknamed the Paris of South America? Buenos Aires, Rio de Janeiro, or Santiago? Buenos Aires. What American car was famously marketed with the slogan, "See the USA in your Chevrolet"? Ford Thunderbird, Chevrolet Bel Air, or Plymouth Fury? Chevrolet Bel Air. Which actor won back-to-back Oscars for Philadelphia and Forrest Gump? Tom Hanks, Kevin Costner, or Denzel Washington? Tom Hanks. Elvis Presley famously performed his 1968 comeback special wearing what color suit? Gold, white, or black leather? Black leather. In the film Gone with the Wind, what was Scarlett O'Hara's famous last line? Tomorrow is another day, I'll think about it later, or after all, tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another day. The Sistine Chapel ceiling was painted by Michelangelo during the reign of which pope? Pope Clement VII, Pope Innocent VIII, or Pope Julius II? Pope Julius II. What was the first Japanese car company to establish a manufacturing plant in the United States? Nissan, Honda, or Toyota? Honda. What film featured the line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat"? Jaws, Titanic, or The Perfect Storm? Jaws. Let's keep going. The Mona Lisa is displayed in which museum? The Prado, the Uffizi Gallery, or the Louvre? The Louvre. Which Spanish artist is known for his blue period and cubism? Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, or Joan Miró? Pablo Picasso. Mount Everest sits on the border between Nepal and which country? China, Bhutan, or India? China. What classic Hollywood actress starred in Breakfast at Tiffany's? Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, or Elizabeth Taylor? Audrey Hepburn. The novel Dracula was written by which author? Bram Stoker, Robert Louis Stevenson, or Mary Shelley? Bram Stoker. What American car brand introduced the GTO muscle car in the 1960s? Dodge, Ford, or Pontiac? Pontiac. The city of Timbuktu, once a major center of learning, is located in which modern country? Mali, Ghana, or Nigeria? Mali. What classic film ends with the line, "Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship"? Citizen Kane, The Maltese Falcon, or Casablanca? Casablanca. The novel The Catcher in the Rye introduces which famously alienated teenager? Nick Carraway, Jay Gatsby, or Holden Caulfield? Holden Caulfield. The DeLorean sports car became iconic after appearing in which film? Grease, Back to the Future, or Ferris Bueller's Days Off? Back to the Future. Who was the first president of the Soviet Union? Leonid Brezhnev, Joseph Stalin, or Mikhail Gorbachev? Mikhail Gorbachev. We are at question 90. Let's keep going. 10 more. In the movie The Wizard of Oz, what color were Dorothy's slippers in the original book? Ruby, gold, or silver? Silver. Which Hollywood film was the first to feature sound in color? The Jazz Singer, The Wizard of Oz, or Gone with the Wind? The Wizard of Oz. Up next, who wrote the Divine Comedy, A Journey Through Hell, Purgatory, and Paradise? Boccaccio, Petrarch, or Dante Alighieri? Dante Alighieri. Which U.S. car model introduced the tailfin craze of the 1950s? Ford Thunderbird, Cadillac Eldorado, or Chrysler 300? Cadillac Eldorado. Which island nation was formerly known as Ceylon? Madagascar, Mauritius, or Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka. Which singer had a record-breaking farewell tour named Farewell Yellow Brick Road? Elton John, Billy Joel, or Paul McCartney? Elton John. What was the nickname of the Ford V8 car that became infamous during the Great Depression? The Classic 8, Tin Lizzie, or Ford Flathead? Ford Flathead. Which U.S. president is carved to the far right on Mount Rushmore? Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, or Theodore Roosevelt? Theodore Roosevelt. Which country is home to the ancient rock-hewn churches of Lalibela? Egypt, Sudan, or Ethiopia? Ethiopia. Which American car was introduced as the pony car in 1964? Dodge Charger, the Camaro, or Ford Mustang? The Ford Mustang. Who gave the command, "tear down this wall," in a speech at Berlin in 1987? George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, or Margaret Thatcher? Ronald Reagan. And our bonus question is, which 20th century novel was originally published under the title Trimalchio in West Egg before revision? Let us know the answer in the comments and, of course, how well you did with our Quiz Class Einstein rewards. Thanks for playing, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.